Welcome to this episode of Season 4 of The Common Bridge, where policy and current events are discussed in a fiercely nonpartisan manner. The host, Richard Helppie, is a philanthropist, entrepreneur, and political analyst who has reached over 3.5 million listeners, viewers, and readers around the world. The Common Bridge is available on the Substack website and the Substack app. Just search for The Common Bridge. You can find the program on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. The Common Bridge draws guests and audiences from across the political spectrum, and we invite you to become a free or paid subscriber on your favorite medium.
Welcome to The Common Bridge. I'm your host, Rich Helppie. We're happy to be bringing this special episode on our Substack platform. Hope you're having a good day as you listen, read, or watch. We're going to talk today about the recent CNN town hall in New Hampshire with former President Donald Trump. And I'd like to share with you today my oft-repeated construct on Mr. Trump, trying to answer the question why he's still the leader in the Republican primary, why he would be such a bad choice, why he's proven he isn't capable, and then ending on why it appears to me he still appeals. So pull up a chair and have a listen to this, or maybe you're at the gym on the elliptical and listening in. So first of all, my construct on Donald Trump, which has never failed me, is this. Number one, he doesn't know the job of president. If I was on an executive committee looking at trying to find a chief executive for the country, he wouldn't be on it because he couldn't pass the interview. Secondly, it doesn't seem to want to learn the job, doesn't want to learn what it takes to be president of the United States. It takes discipline, it takes great preparation, it takes a lot of listening skills as well. And then thirdly, he has massive personal issues. It's absolutely undeniable. So, who votes for him? Well, first of all, it's part of his base. And I say part of his base because he's never expanded his base. And also some Democrats who know he can't win in a general election, they will cross over during the primary. And of course, that saves current President Biden and the Democrats from running on their record. Another reason he's still a leader, he's again making the media complex his foil, and they're playing right into his hands. Just think if they actually were doing honest reporting and they could be trusted, this guy wouldn't even be on the radar of anybody. So why has he proved he isn't capable? Well, at the top of it, it's always about him. And if you watched everything from the COVID briefings to the inauguration day when he was made president, to the current claims of election fraud that don't seem to go away, it's always all about him. Um, that's not the job of the president. The president's supposed to serve. Um, Secondly, January 6th, no matter how you dice it and slice it and what you personally think may have occurred and why it occurred, some things are just undeniable. The attorney general for the president told him after a month of investigation that the claims of fraud changing the election were bullshit. That's the words of Attorney General William Barr. His own vice president said you need to follow the law, and he took exception to that. And then finally, when you lose, try to lose gracefully, and not greeting the incoming president as he arrived at the White House is just beyond the pale. And then think about this. Suppose by some strange turn of events, Donald Trump was elected president in 2024. Um, Despite the fact that we'd again see his opposition rioting in the streets after a duly conducted election, what would he be doing? It would be vengeance. It would be pardons. It would be a rewrite of history. It would again be all about him. And we'd be back to the name calling, the pettiness, and the crazy 3 a.m. tweets, that maybe those were novel in 2016, or maybe nobody was expecting them, but we'd all look like idiots around the world for doing that again. So, why does Donald Trump still appeal? Well, I'm going to go through a list of them. Again, my point of view. First of all, is sympathy. Every time there's a manufactured story, a conviction by media, an exaggeration, deliberate misreporting, it just helps Mr. Trump. Yes, I know it pumps up the base on the left. It gives people places to exercise their anger. Um, but also, more people have seen enough of the coordinated talking points and the mischaracterizations of Mr. Trump, and the way that they put a headline on something. When you look past it, it's not really what happened. It's old, it's exhausting. It's why people are turning off. Next, let's face it, the Hunter Biden story, that was throttled, that now we know that due to testimony under oath, 51 intelligence chiefs were asked to provide cover by the Biden administration to say something that was not true. And so, an appeal for Mr. Trump is that he's not part of that. And now we have the whistleblower coming out about money flowing from international sources into the Biden family. That's cause and for concern, and which makes people say, what's the alternative to more of Joe Biden? And then, of course, there's some of the bigger issues. The border, there still needs to be an answer. We need to get to a rational immigration policy. We need people. We need to not make people come in hordes. We're a much better country than that, yet it goes unaddressed. Military readiness, how prepared are we? The Afghanistan withdrawal, of course, was completely mishandled, and that is something that, unfortunately, from a political point of view, plays into Mr. Trump's favor. The raging inflation brought about by the big spending bills, the conundrum around energy and going from a net energy exporter to a net energy importer. There needs to be a more rational plan about how we change the energy sources in the country. Um, the war in the Ukraine. And as you saw in the CNN interview, the news complex wants Donald Trump to say he wants one of the combatants to lose. And they insist that he says it right after he says he just wants people to stop dying. It's almost as if the CNN anchor is arguing that having the dying and destruction stop is a bad thing. And you couldn't possibly go into a three-way negotiation or a moderated negotiation if you're publicly saying we want that person to lose. That's not mediation if it is. Um, People like the idea of Europe paying more for their own defense. Abortion, weirdly, could be a good topic for Mr. Trump because he's dually taking the credit, dually, Dually, taking the credit for the judicial appointees that overturned Roe versus Wade, and also saying that he's looking for a middle ground about the exceptions for rape and incest and such, and then at a predetermined period in the gestational process. All reasonable things most Americans would agree with. Um, Back to the sympathy, the Presidential Records Act, again, the CNN moderator, admitted that Joe Biden took documents as vice president, something that he can't declassify, and then accepts that old, honest, and organized Joe said he gave everything back. Okay, doesn't pass the sniff test. And then finally, fear. President Biden keeps broadening his appeal to what most Americans think are fringe constituencies. That's causing some fear and unease. And more voices on the left are calling for more censorship and deplatforming. And the death of a free society is when people cannot speak. And for those that think deplatforming is a great idea, it'll eventually deplatform you. And finally, there's the matter of Joe Biden's health and age and the obvious effects of his age and his medical condition so far. And again, think about this. Had the opposing party put in a vibrant leader of an appropriate age and vigor, uh, there would be no room for Mr. Trump. It would simply be, we've dealt with the border, we've dealt with the economy, we've dealt with the climate, we've dealt with taxes, we've dealt with energy. But they can't say that, cannot run on their own record. So naturally, they want to run against Donald Trump. Now, as I've said for years, I don't think Mr. Trump belongs in the Oval Office. I think it's terrible for the country to do a replay of Biden versus Trump, and I've published on that. America, it's time to move on, and it's up to us. We need to get better candidates. We need to insist the people that we have elected behave better, and we need to turn off the media that just wants to anger and divide us. And this is your host, Rich Helppie, on the Common Bridge with today's editorial outlook.
Thanks for joining us on the Common Bridge. Subscribe to the Common Bridge on Substack.com or use their Substack app, where you can find more interviews, columns, videos, and nonpartisan discussions of the day. Just search for the Common Bridge. You can also find the Common Bridge on Mission Control Radio on your Radio Garden app.